Thank you for standing by. Your conference will begin shortly. Thank you for standing by. Your conference will begin shortly. Welcome, and thank you for standing by. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode until the question and answer session of today's conference. At that time, if you would like to ask a question, please dial *1. Today's call is being recorded. If you have any objections, please disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the conference over to Patrick Lynch. Thank you. You may begin.
Thank you, and hello. Good morning. Thank everyone for joining today. My name is Patrick Lynch. I'm the Deputy Chief of the Office of Communications at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. As the launch of the James Webb Space Telescope draws nearer, we wanted to set up this opportunity to talk to you all about some of the unique circumstances, certainly for NASA, at least around covering this launch, and then also give you all a chance to ask questions of NASA, of the different mission partners about that launch coverage. So this is very much an informational call. We want to talk about some things with you all and hear your questions too. We will be looking at, as we go through this today, a PDF document that was emailed out to everyone who RSVP'd a little bit before the call. So we'll be going through that. If you don't have it for some reason, please reach out to the public affairs officer who you communicated with to get the call-in information, and we can get that to you. So to start, I'm looking at the call agenda on page 2 of that PDF. Just a quick overview. In addition to me, we have on the line Nina Menning from the European Space Agency, Cyril Bougie from Arianespace, Christine Pulliam from the Space Telescope Science Institute, and Andrea Matt from the Canadian Space Agency. They're all on as either speakers or to answer questions when we get to Q&A. We will preview some of the virtual and in-person events that will provide media opportunities to interact with the mission team members in the run-up to launch, so I'll have an idea about all the opportunities available. We'll talk about the requirements and the details of launch day itself, both at the launch site in Kourou and also at the Mission Operations Center, which is at the Space Telescope Science Institute in Baltimore, Maryland. That is, of course, where they will take control of the observatory following spacecraft separation shortly after launch. And then finally, we want to open this up for your questions. 2 quick final notes. Webb is continuing to target a December 18th launch date. Before we maybe get any questions about shipping from to the launch site, let me just say that we will, of course, announce to the world when Webb arrives in Kourou. We'll be thrilled to do so. But otherwise, not much we can say about that. And then also we are streaming this audio on NASA TV so people can follow along. And because there is follow-up programming, we have to wrap this up by 9:45 Eastern. So with that, let us go on to slide 3. So again, this is a high-level preview of the upcoming events. We will, of course, follow up with detail when these dates lock into place. Some of that is dependent on the sort of operational schedule of things. And when those dates do get locked in, we will, of course, publicize all of these more officially, those that haven't been publicized already. But mostly we just want to share this so you all are aware. There will be plenty of opportunities. Obviously, we're all still in this virtual space, largely to interact with the mission, to learn about the engineering, the science, to talk to the different mission partners. And all of these briefings and interactions that you're seeing here mostly involve, all of the mission partners on pretty much, on most of them, we'll say that. So again, this will be coming out with more fidelity soon. These dates are notional and, like I said, dependent on the operational schedule, but wanted to preview that just so you all know that there's plenty of opportunities coming up. So we can look at page 4 of the document, and these are just the kind of the high-level facts on the ground that we're looking at. So due to COVID, guidelines in both locations, the available number of media slots is limited. We are looking at about 20 slots for accredited media in Kourou and about 35 slots for accredited media at the Mission Operations Center in Baltimore. And obviously there are other requirements there which we can get into in more detail in a second. In addition to the number limitations here, one of the questions that we have received the most is whether the agencies involved would be either chartering transportation or covering costs for travel. And we want to be clear that those things are simply not options. So we know it's not easy to get to Kourou and that there are limited slots. This is one of the reasons we wanted to set up this call and explain all that and get questions. But the transportation aspect of this and the cost of it will fall to the media outlets. So we can move on to slide 5. Following this call, both NASA and ESA will open up registration forms, just be later today, to collect expressions of interest from you all about covering the launch activities in person, and this would be for both locations. The NASA form will be for both locations. We're going to leave that up until October 20th is the current plan. And the plan there is we need to get a good understanding of how many people are truly interested in making this trip to either location, given the limitations, the number limitations, and of course the logistical challenges. So before we make everyone submit all of this cumbersome official accreditation, we need get a handle on what those numbers are, and recognizing we might also face the circumstances where we have more people who are interested in going than we have slots, which is not a situation that we're looking forward to, but one that might have to deal with certainly with all the partners working together on that. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Cyrielle with Ariane Spas to talk about requirements and logistics in Kourou on slide 6.
Hello, everybody. So when it comes to French Guiana, we have to follow a few rules that are quite mandatory, actually. So the first one is that all travelers must be vaccinated for yellow fever at least 10 days before entering French Guiana. The proper documents will be requested by authorities before boarding the planes in Paris, and you will have to show an international vaccination pass. You have to be aware that this territory is also subject of malaria and Zika virus, which are transmitted to people through mosquito bites. So we do recommend to invest in insect repellent to make sure that everybody's fine at the end of the stay. As of right now, French Guiana is considered to be a red zone for COVID-19. Therefore, we have strict rules for now, at least. If you're vaccinated, you can access the territory without any problem, but you do have to show an international vaccination pass, just like for malaria, for yellow fever. For non-vaccinated people, you will have to present a PCR test of less than 72 hours or an antigen test of less than 48 hours. The thing is, if you're not vaccinated, you must self-isolate for 7 days after entering the territory. So it is something that you do have to consider when it comes to logistics. There is also a curfew for now, which is from 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. every day and all day long on Sundays. Restaurants are closed, but it is possible to have food delivered to your room or to have takeout. Regarding travel authorizations, you need a visa if you're not a citizen from the European Union. This requirement has been waived by for some foreign nationals, and you can find the complete list on the website of the Ministry in charge of European and Foreign Affairs in France. And in French Guiana, of course, the currency is euro.
Great. Thank you, Cyrielle. Let's go ahead and move on to the next page. And Christine Pulliam on page 7 of the document can talk about the details on the ground at the Mission Operations Center in Baltimore.
Thank you, Patrick. The Space Telescope Science Institute is home to the Mission Operations Center. Our location is a building that's on the edge of the Johns Hopkins University campus in Baltimore. Media who are traveling here to Baltimore for this event will have parking available in Johns Hopkins University garages. We wanted to let everyone know that we will have a dedicated press work area and, of course, access to subject matter experts, both in science as well as mission operations for questions and interviews. And, of course, since the launch itself is happening in Kourou, we will be following it via the NASA launch broadcast along with the rest of the world. We have arranged for some hotel room blocks in the Hilton, Baltimore Inner Harbor, and Sheraton North, which is to say that we have these blocks available, but media will still be responsible for the costs of those hotel rooms. And there will be shuttle service from those hotels to the Institute. The specific hours of that are to be determined. Of course, COVID-19 is still a concern, so we do expect to require on-site media to be fully vaccinated or to have a negative PCR test within 72 hours. And we are pleased that we are going to be able to offer tours of the Mission Operations Center on the afternoon of the day before launch for media who are on site early. So we will be prepared to, check in media the day before, offer these tours, which there should be opportunities for photography and filming there. but we did want to be clear that there will be no media access to the Mission Operations Center on launch day itself. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Christine. So that's the high-level details that we wanted to walk through first. And with that, Madison, we can go back to you and open this up for questions and answers.
Great, thank you. If you would like to ask a question, please dial *1, unmute your phone, and record your name clearly. If you need to withdraw your question, please dial *2. Again, to ask a question, please dial *1. And it will take just a few moments for those questions to come through. Thank you. Our first question is from Marina Corin from The Atlantic. Marina, your line is open.
Hi, good morning. 2 questions for you today. Can you give us a time frame for when JWST might arrive? I know you can't give us an exact date, but is it, next week, the week after that? And then for the 20 spots for press that will be available in Kourou, once you've gotten those letters of interest and you've opened up credentials, let's say you get a huge response, how will you go about deciding how to allot those 20 spots? Thank you.
Sure, I can take a first crack at those. We can. If you looked at previous statements, we've talked about needing, or NASA officials have talked about needing, roughly sort of a 2-month preparation timeline at the launch site. So, we'll be glad to, again, announce it when we arrive. So I'd say that. We have talked about that as far as, number one, that's why we really want to get this going, is we don't know how many people are really going to be interested in doing all of this, the travel and the logistics, et cetera. And we have talked about it at the level of, we know we can look at the various mission partners, at what countries they're representing, what the overall mix is, and try to come up with as fair a way as possible to make sure that we're getting a good representation for the public, and also for you all as far as who is expressing interest in going. So I will be honest, we haven't nailed down like this is the exact criteria. We need to see the numbers that come in, and it's our intention to work together and be sort of as fair as possible and trying to figure out what we can do. It's probably not a great help at this moment, but that's where we are.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Bill Hardwood from CBS. Bill, your line is open.
Yeah, hi, thanks. I've got a couple. In terms of the Baltimore Mission Ops Center, how long would you plan to keep the Ops Center open after launch? And the reason I'm asking is I realize it's Christmas, but I'm thinking of Sunshade Deploy, and want to know if it's possible to cover that from there. And also, I'm assuming there will be internet access at the Mission Ops Center in the press area. Second question, and final question is, depending on the demand, if you fill up the 35 slots pretty quickly, is there any thinking about maybe having a secondary site either at Goddard or at NASA headquarters? Thanks.
So I'll take that last one first, and then Christine, if you want to jump in on the access, post-launch at the Institute. We have talked about that, Bill. I think, again, one of the reasons we want to, gather the who's interested. The one thought I've had in my mind is that as far as a ancillary, place at headquarters or at Goddard, I'm not quite sure what we would have to offer you other than, you're a little bit closer and you're on a NASA facility. If there's interest in doing that, we would certainly, look into it. If there's enough interest and you all think it would be, worth your while. So yes, it has come up. And again, we'll have to see what the level of interest in making that kind of trip. Christine, do you want to follow up on the Institute access post-launch?
Sure. Yeah, so we have already had some people express interest in being on site to cover some of those deployments. We haven't really made a determination of how we might support that, but we're certainly, open to the idea. A couple of the challenges, as you mentioned, this is going to be happening over the holidays, and also, we have a nominal timeline for when things will happen, but of course it's really going to depend on how everything goes. So we can't, specifically say be here on this day if you want to cover the SunShield deployment. So that's, definitely something still being discussed. And as far as internet access, yes, we will definitely have Wi-Fi available in the press work area. And actually you should be able to get it just outside the building as well. One of the things that will be helpful for us in our planning is if you do have any special requirements, please do pass that along.
Thanks.
Our next question comes from Irene Klotz from Aviation Week. Irene, your line is open.
Good morning. I have a few questions. The first is about the launch countdown. If NASA's planning on providing or Arianespace a clean feed without the commentary, and if not, could you please think about doing that? And for Christine, are there any events on site at the Space Telescope Science Institute prior to the tour the day before launch, and how long do you expect to keep the newsroom open post-launch? Thanks.
So on the first one, Irene, this is Patrick. I was just talking with Cyril about that. It's certainly on our radar, again, with all of the travel difficulties here of providing that clean feed. So yes, that's certainly on our radar, something that we want to be able to do. And then I'll pass off to Christine for the second part.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, in addition to the tours, we are looking at potentially doing some science briefings featuring some Institute scientists. But other than that, we don't have any other events planned for the day before. As far as launch day itself and how long we anticipate having the press room open, there are some media who have expressed interest in being on site through the first engine burn, which is scheduled to happen at approximately L plus 12.5 hours. So we are prepared to support that. So right now, nominally, we would close the press room at about L plus 14 hours.
Thanks, Christine. Would those science briefings be also just the day before launch, or is there a reason to come out earlier if we're able to?
Yeah, right now we don't have anything planned any earlier than the day before launch.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So Irene, I would add to that, we do plan to do currently an L-3 briefing, which would be virtual because we're pulling people in from so many different places. So that would occur, but it's, like I said, it's virtual. I'm not sure that you would necessarily gain anything from being on site there.
Thank you.
Our next question comes from Julio Cesar Chavez from Reuters. Julio, your line is open.
Hi there. I had a quick question. When it comes to the limited availability slots, is priority going to be given to visual journalists like photographers or videographers over reporters? Is the first question. Second question would be if an agency, in this case Reuters, wants to send both a photographer and a videographer, would that be considered as a single bid, or would it be possible if you guys decide to only grant it to one person that you would grant it to one half of the team?
Sure. So I can take a crack at this, and then Nina, perhaps you might want to jump in too. Again, these are some of the things that we've thought about might surface. we clearly, we'll need to look at a balance of broadcasts, photography, and print, writing, etc. And likewise, if we have people who from a single outlet who are looking for multiple slots with a good reason, like you just outlined, then that's something that we're going to have to take into account too. Again, we want to be as rational and as fair about it as possible, given what that limitation is. Nina, is there anything else that you would want to add along those lines?
That's fully correct what you said, Patrick. I mean, the 20 slots is really 20 people, so it's not 20 media, but it's really 20 journalists, 20 photographers, 20 whatever it is. So we are clearly limited here in numbers, and you can imagine if there's much more interest than these 20 places, of course, we would give, preference to those that, let's say, that have a wider reach, or that would pool the material, or would have a wide range of distribution, so that as many people as possible can make use of these 20 places.
Okay. And then I wanted to ask, would it be possible to apply for Kourou with Baltimore as a fallback, or do we have to apply for everything or nothing, essentially?
Yeah. Yes, you can. So the NASA registration form, again, when it goes online later today, it will a very simple, check a box. I would, like to go to Kourou. I would like to go to Baltimore, or I would go to either, if the opportunity presents. So yes, you can register your interest for both.
Okay, and my final question, just to make sure of this, there would be post-launch. Would there be post-launch interview opportunities for the people who get a spot at Kourou with both NASA and ESA scientists and Canadian scientists?
Yes, I certainly think that would be the case. The plan is to do, of course, a post-launch briefing several hours after launch, and that would be broadcast as well. But for those who are on site, you'd certainly have access to the people from the different agencies.
Great. Thank you so much.
Our next question comes from Dan Cleary from Science Magazine. Dan, your line is open.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Well, afternoon for me, anyway. I just wanted to ask, you haven't mentioned an in-person event from ESA at ESTEC in the Netherlands. I understand they were going to do one, but you haven't mentioned it. I just wondered if that's still planned.
Yeah, it's Ninja here. That's indeed planned. It's for during the launch, so it's a launch event as such. I think similar to what is also planned in Canada. This is an event that takes place in ESTEC, as you so rightly mentioned, which is our technology center in the Netherlands. We will have a variety of scientists there that are available for interview, and there will also be relations and friends and family from the project coming together. So it will really have an event spirit as such. So it is also possible for media to attend that event and make use of that for interviews. So I can invite you all to make use of that possibility as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Our next question comes from Jeff Faust from Space News. Jeff, your line is open.
Good morning. I wanted to ask for Kourou what the plans are besides the launch itself in terms of briefings, interview opportunities, tours, other events going on there for media to cover, and then also what sort of notional timeline, how many days before launch would you expect media to need to arrive or would be able to arrive early for some of those events?
Cyril or Nina, would you want to talk about the timeline there in terms of when you would expect or want media to arrive?
You mean in Kourou itself?
Yes.
You're only referring to Kourou? Yes, so I think the most important I mean, there are, of course, several aspects when planning a trip. Is that this is a launch date, but there are also potential launch delays that can always happen. So if you plan a trip, keep that in mind and try to make your trip flexible. So if there is a launch delay, which we all don't hope, of course, but in case there is, that you can accommodate that. I think that's important. Usually we cover, in terms of program for the media, we cover a short turnaround for the launch. So it would be the day of the launch. So typically one would arrive the day before and would leave the day after the launch. So usually we're talking here 48 hours or something. So you would arrive on the 17th and probably leave then on the 19th.
Okay, and just to clarify, you're not planning any sort of other activities for the media beyond the launch itself and presumably the post-launch briefing at Kourou?
Oh, we haven't finalized the program yet for the media, because we're also organizing a pre-launch press trip to Kourou in the beginning of November. There will be a media around the launch, so media will have the opportunity, of course, to see the facilities and to do interviews, etc. But the final program we do not have yet. But there will be other opportunities rather than just seeing the launch. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I look forward to more details as those come up. Thanks.
Our next question comes from Jackie Goddard from the Times of London. Jackie, your line is open.
Yes, hello. Is there any difference between applying through NASA and applying through ESA? So if we're resident media in the US, but we cover for a European-based publication, is there any advantage in applying through ESA, or is it just going to be equal allocation to both? You know, is there any advantage between applying through one or the other?
There is no advantage.
Okay. Thank you.
So we have these two different ways of applying, because for the European media we have a different set of rules applying to registration forms. So that's a very simple answer to why there are two ways of registering. But ultimately, in the end, it all comes together, and we look at it as one list and as one opportunity. So there is no separation. It's just two different forms ending up at the end of the day in the same discussion.
That's reassuring. Okay, thank you.
Our next question comes from Gino Horrell from Radio Canada. Gino, your line is open.
Hi, my question is similar to Darren Clear's question about ESA, and it's for Andrea Matt. My question for Andrea Matt, but I'll ask it in English for the benefit of others. Is there any way to get a bit more details about what's coming up for us in Canada? I see that there's a briefing coming up in about a month, but do you have an idea of what could happen then, and if it will be possible to have some of your scientists maybe prior to launch for shows as ours that is weekly?
Hi, Gino. We can talk afterwards, but for more details. But we will have a launch at the CSA for a launch event at the CSA, so that Canadian media can cover on site. We'll have spokespeople available for interviews there. We're also participating in some of the other international events where there'll be a Canadian who will speak to the Canadian aspects of the mission. And the L-30, we're offering a French and English briefing so that the French media also have access to directly French language briefings on the science and the instruments that were contributed by Canada. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
Our next question comes from Chris Gebhardt from NASA Spaceflight. Chris, your line is open.
Thank you. I have a couple of logistical questions for the 20 slots down in Kourou. You had mentioned an international vaccination pass for those of us in the U.S. Do our CDC vaccination cards count for that, or would we have to register for an international travel app for that? And actually on the ground, for those of us who would be interested in broadcasting, if we got one of those slots, what kind of services are there? Was there internet capability, broadcast quality that would be provided to us, or would we have to work with local providers down there to get that? Thank you.
Okay, so regarding the international vaccination pass, it is mandatory as of right now, so you will have to request one. But you know that the rules are changing quite often when it comes to COVID. So hopefully they will be a little bit less annoying when we get to December. Regarding the facilities and the services that we provide there, we have a press room with a Wi-Fi that you can use. We also have technical support for broadcasting. So you should be able to find everything on site. And, of course, we'll be happy to provide you a detailed list of all the services that we can provide there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. One more. Hotels in Kourou. You had mentioned that ideally, like you would arrive the day before and leave the day after launch. Is there any like hotel room blocks that we would pay for, but that you all have reserved down there, or for those of us who get it, would that be something that you would? Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Don't worry, everything is booked. We made sure that you'll be able to actually sleep somewhere else than on the beach. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Our next question comes from Miles Doran from CBS News. Miles, your line is open.
Hi, thanks. Chris just touched on this a little bit, but for television broadcasters, what kind of locations are available for live shots in both Kourou and in Baltimore, and what would that look like? In Baltimore, would that be inside, outside the building, and in Kourou, what kind of, would we need a satellite truck there? Is there internet access available for like outside broadcasting with the launch pad visible in the background? How's cell phone service out there? That sort of thing. Thanks.
Would you all want to take that for Kourou first?
Yeah. So regarding Kourou, we do have a satellite car that is booked, so we will be able to use it. For the location where you can shoot, you will have access to a terrace that has a direct view on the launch pad. So you will be able to shoot there the images of the liftoff phase.
And for Baltimore, we'll have a couple of indoor locations with backdrops that will be set up. Also, crews frequently will shoot outside the building, directly in front of the building where there's an institute logo that gets used often. So I would say at least those three locations, 2 interior areas and then outside.
Our next question comes from Bill Schultz from Photonics Focus. Bill, your line is open.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Could you be more specific about which science experts will be on hand the day before launch in Baltimore, and who might be in Kourou?
So
for Baltimore, we're still working on that list.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing as far as the NASA people. There, obviously, we know who operationally needs to be on console, but those folks will be less available for interviews. And I think that as far as the scientists and others who aren't on console who would really be available, some of those things are still in flux, whether they would be in Kourou, in Baltimore, or even there's an employee viewing event at Goddard. So certainly understand that, we'll need to get some clarity around that as we get closer, but you can assume that there will be, people available certainly at any of those locations.
People who can speak both to the technical details about the instrument as well as the astronomy?
Yes. I don't want to answer on your behalf, Christine, but yes.
Yes, same.
Okay, thank you.
Our next question comes from Stephen Clark from Spaceflight Now. Stephen, your line is open.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to echo, first of all, Irene's request for a clean feed from Kuru starting, in the hours before launch. That's really helpful without commentary. Regarding NASA TV's coverage, have you decided how long before launch NASA TV will come up live and how long after the launch? And also, regarding the deployments, the post-launch deployments over the days and weeks after the launch, will there be any NASA TV coverage of those events or news briefings planned around those events? Thanks.
Sure. So I can jump in on that. And yes, copy on your question about the clean feed. That's something that we will, I think, try to get cleared up soon and get an answer for you all on. Let's see. The deployments was the second question. Oh, and the NASA TV launch coverage. Yeah, the current plan is to come online for good, I think, to stay through starting in about 90 minutes before launch. We may come online briefly several hours beforehand, just when they do sort of a poll, to a go, no-go poll, and to probably stay on at least an hour afterward. So that's the current plan for the launch broadcast. Of course, as we get into it, that could change a little bit, but that's the current plan. For the deployments, yes, there is a plan to provide NASA TV coverage at different moments and follow-up media briefings after several of the critical milestones. So, obviously, Sunshield deployment has been mentioned earlier, the secondary mirror structure deployment, the primary mirror deployment. Looking at these as the big major milestones that happen over the several weeks following launch, and the plan is to provide NASA TV coverage around those moments and to provide media briefings again